Can you like show me your shirt? Because that is almost exactly what maybe I'll just take a screenshot of that. That's kind of what I had in mind for the idea for the logo, right? Because it's like because it's like a brush, so that implies creativity.
This is actually called a Debian swirl.
A Debian swirl.
And I didn't know about that until I got this shirt at a trade show. And then some Unix guys came up to me. I guess it's a.
Why is it always the Unix guys?
It's like a free Unix thing. So I'm wearing this shirt. I don't know how to program. Now I've got this uber geeky Unix shirt on, and so I'm getting these guys coming up to me going, "Hey, cool shirt."
Yeah.
And one of them told me what it was, but I kind of went, yeah, I don't really know what it is.
You didn't really realize what it was until a bunch of big smelly dudes came up to you that had been working on code for 3 weeks. Sorry, Debian guys. Why don't we let's kick off the show in a formal way.
Meet our guest.
Mike Swanson. Mike Swanson, welcome to Creative Debate. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Dex. It's my honor.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're honored. Hey, well, I know you, but people watching might not. So how about if you just tell us a little bit about your background and what you're working on now and what you hope to do in the future?
Sure, yeah. I went in and I started out as an artist in the gaming industry and worked as an artist for many, many, many years, and then went into art management, lead artist, art director, then started doing studio art management, and then technical studio art management, and did all those roles, and then made a switch at one point to production at a company called Gas Power Games, and have been doing production for the last 10 years at a number of companies. I tend to be one of those people that I worked at EA for 10 years, and I worked at Gas Powers, I think, for 6 years, and currently I am doing consulting out of my house in Santa Rosa, beautiful wine country. And it's been great flying out of here. We got a little airport that I can fly anywhere from.
Oh, really? I didn't know there was an airport in Santa Rosa.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome. It has
Wow.
I think it has United in Alaska. And
oh, really?
You can't be afraid of little turboprop planes. They can get you down to LA, to Vegas, up to Seattle, up to Portland, and then, from there, if you need to go to Montreal or to New York or something like that, you can
jump on a jet.
Yeah, but I think the lineup at Santa Rosa might take you 5 minutes to get through.
Just you and a couple Grape Farmers.
Exactly.
Is that it?
Exactly. Guy's got a bag of grapes going through. Your wine.
Sir, can we check your grapes? Are they stomped or pre-stomped? We need to know.
Yeah, the pre-stomp ones are great.
Yeah. Well, no, that's cool. So with your consulting, are you specializing in production?
Mainly my background is in production and art production. So I tend to do a little bit more with that. But there's also a lot of investors out there and investment companies that want advice in the industry. And so I have kind of a unique perspective of working at these companies, and also just keeping abreast of what's going on in the game industry, which big games are coming out, how they align up against each other, what I hear about them, like, do they have loot boxes? Is there still controversial issues around loot boxes? Do we think that's going to be a big thing? Like in China, they're still banning games. So I kind of advise these people and say, well, here's my take on what I think is going to happen. And so much is happening, even with just tariffs that you have in China, and when they're asking about certain graphics cards, some of the big things, right, that Wall Street is interested in now is ray tracing, real-time ray tracing, how that's going to affect the industry. And I also talk to them about streaming technology. How's that going to affect the industry, right? So the industry is poised for a pretty big change, and I think a lot of people want to align and say, who are going to be the winners and losers in that. And so when I got into it, it's interesting when you're advising these companies, you get a little bit nervous. You're like, am I right? Am I, looking into my crystal ball, do I know more than anyone else? And then so after a while, you realize, you start reading articles, and you're like, okay, well, the top industry guy now is talking about, the CEO of these game companies are talking exactly about what I'm talking about. So
you're in good company with your knowledge and Yeah. Well, and plus you've got a very cool Debian shirt, so that right there gives you instant credibility, man.
Cred right there.
Yeah, tons of venture capitalist guys. The minute they see that shirt, they go, oh, whoa, this guy, serious. Yeah.
There's also a lot of little startups that want to know how they structure their teams and things like that. So
yeah,
there's a lot of work. I think doing consulting from home, it's not for everyone, and it can be, a little lonely at times.
So that's why you're doing the podcast. That's why.
Right. It's my daily. I get to talk to a human.
You're getting lonely, and I've only got 3 viewers for the show, so you're not doing it for the publicity, man. But yeah,
spreadsheets aren't really like super social.
Right. Yeah, maybe that's the next big thing, Mike. Collaborative spreadsheets that are rendered with real-time ray tracing.
Oh, yeah. Excel could use a facelift.
Yeah, I wonder about that, though, right? Because it's just so radically functional. It's so stodgy and people
always ask, there's so many new programs out there for scheduling. At the end of the day, you can just use Excel and Word document and, PowerPoint, and that's your whole suite. You can run your entire damn company off that, right?
Yeah, that's it, man.
Yeah, so when I was at a company called Big Point, I owned the P&L, and the P&L was in this giant Excel worksheet that was linked into their head office. And this thing would usually take about 5 minutes to open up. And it had all sorts of
macros and
everything in it. And it was a little dicey. You could change one thing and it would just ripple through and destroy everything else. And so you constantly had to have another version to go back to. But I was absolutely astounded at what you could do with this program. But they just had one guy who's like, I can create this awesome worksheet for you and make it do what we want it to do.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. I worked on Windows Mobile for a while, for about a year, and the lab manager guy, he was kind of Merlin, the Excel wizard, man, and he had all these macros that would take all the test data and just go blah, 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 and spit things out and send things here and kick off test cases and all kinds of weird stuff that he managed to make Excel do. That I was like, really, you can do all this with Excel? He was like, oh yeah, just a little macro. Look at this. A little visual basic.
Back to you'd had a question you'd asked me if you could go back in time, what we do, and I said, oddly enough, for a creative guy, I would actually take programming and or engineering,
right?
So I could actually do stuff like that, because it is frustrating that I always have to tap someone on the shoulder. Hey, could you write this for me? And they're just looking at you like the idiot. It's always the same thing. Like, yeah, hold on, click,
right?
And you're like, oh, how did I not know that?
Yeah. Now I know that's like anything. There's always somebody smarter, it's actually calling people smarter. It's not even really that. There's people that just have spent a lot of time doing a certain thing and they just have amassed a lot of knowledge, right? And I've worked with so many people like that in technology.
Well, that's why, when I went from an artist to art management, one of the things that is also being, one thing you can cultivate is being self-aware. Like, what's the limits of your talent? And I knew as an artist, I knew I could get better, but I just wasn't disciplined. But I knew how to recognize people who were terrifically talented and who were smarter than me. And I just always hired someone who was like way smarter than me, way better than me. And that's always served me well, because you built up a team and suddenly your team is just running smoothly and allows you to go off and not worry about that part of it. You can worry about another part of it.
Right. Yeah. Hiring the best people. That's what they always say. Hire people smarter than yourself. So, and it makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. Cool. Well, here we got a little pregnant pause. Edit that out probably.
It's only about 6 months pregnant though.
Yeah. I'll go get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Come back. Now it's time to play Street Debater.
Mm-hmm.
Street Debater. Player 1 versus Player 2. Debate location chosen.
Good one for you, or you want to go for something new? Now's your big chance. Like the last time you played Street Debater, you were like, wish we had done this other thing, like fry cook versus dishwasher, and my hopes were dashed.
Whoever wins this one will have their name enshrined in the Hall of Debaters. Are you ready? And the battle of words begins.
This is going to be graphic designer versus illustrator. Pick your fighter, Mike.
So I'm going to go with graphic designer.
All right, that makes me illustrator. So why does graphic designer beat the illustrator?
Debate. Round one.
As an illustrator, you're doing one thing, and I think that's fine. But I think with a graphic designer, you could be designing a whole user interface. You could be designing a whole print media for it, whereas the illustrator is just doing one component of that.
That's a pretty strong argument, Mike. But I'll tell you why you're wrong. The illustrator comes up with the characters. No graphic designer ever created some iconic character that can make billions of dollars. Therefore, the illustrator wins.
You win.
Okay, I think the game's rigged, but
hey, listen, if you think it's rigged, now's your chance to play the illustrator, and I'll be graphic designer. We'll see who wins this battle. We'll see who wins round two.
Debate. Round two.
You know, the illustrator is the hero of the job, right? They create the memorable scenes. You know, they can create the logo for a company and brand for the company. You know, they're singularly focused and they're a pro at what they do. Therefore, they should win.
Man, I gotta say, Mike, and that's gonna be hard to beat. But with the graphic designer, they design the letterhead. They design all the things important. Fund your little art studio or game company. Therefore, the graphic designer wins.
Win.
Jesus Christ, you're gonna get a whole bunch of internet illustrator trolls leaving comments.
I probably am, but hey, I have a strong illustrator argument to begin with, so you know. And
dude, I kind of co-opted it.
It was good. It was good. Why not? If you got a good argument, I know you put your own little spin on it, man. That was good.
Oh yeah.
That was nice.
I mean, that's truly the art of co-opting something, right?
That's it, man. You did it. So, well, you know, Mike, I'm sad to say though that I win the street debater for today, and of course that's because it's my show. So if you want to win, you've got to start your own show. Do you want to get into like kind of just creativity in general now?
Let's do it.
On creativity.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike Swanson on creativity. What is creativity?
Creativity for me is it's sort of disciplining the brain to do things that are outside of its comfort zone. Really creative people don't see the world the same way as everyone else who are just, they're going to stay in their comfort zone. They're going to watch the same TV shows. They're going to go to the same museums. They're going to go see the same music. You know, I find really creative people, they have a real broad spectrum of things they like or don't like. You know, they're not just meat and potatoes, you know.
Yes.
Meat and potatoes with sushi on top. It's
meat and potatoes with sushi on. I can't even say it. Meat and potatoes with sushi on top. Man,
it's a great meal. Great creative meal.
Yeah. That could be your new logo. Yeah, you can have like meatloaf with some gravy and then throw a sushi on top, you know?
Meatloaf and sushi restaurant. There we go.
That's the new fusion wave of the future right there, man.
That's something you can get there in Austin, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we've got everything except for that. So
yeah, you know, I think no one's born being more creative than anybody else. It's just something that, you know, as people grow up, everybody's creative as a kid. You're playing with other kids and making up stories as you go along. And then what happens, you get into the discipline of school and you're kind of taught not to be so creative. You're taught to fall in line. You're taught to, you know, memorize stuff.
Right.
And you know, I think the school system, I think it's great, but I think...
Do you really, Mike?
No, I think the school system is great. I think part of the problem, I think, with a lot of education is that it's about memorizing. It's not about sort of that immersion into whatever it is you want to do, right?
Yeah, right.
You know, I think with creativity, you know, there's classes like music, but art class especially, I think allows kids to kind of still foster that creativity in school, right? You can kind of do like, hey, you know, draw a bird, but draw the bird in your own way. I took music, I was playing trumpet. And, you know, when you're playing it, it's like you have to play it exactly like this. You can't go off and do some sort of jazz standard, right? Like it's like...
Yeah, right.
So you kind of learn not to be creative and I think it's sort of, maybe it's just out of necessity so that we can learn stuff. And people kind of forget how to be a kid. And as they go along, some people don't forget. In fact, they kind of keep going back to that. And, you know, it's not about being immature. It's about still being creative and creatively thinking, right? And that can be art, writing, music, you know, someone who's being funny. People who are exceptionally funny, you know, comedians and that, you know, they are really brilliant people, right?
Yeah, and also incorporating in, you know, that's what comedy is, right? It's like when they tell a joke and the punchline is usually a twist, right? So the setup it makes your brain think that they're going to say something in particular, and then they twist that around, and that's what makes you laugh because you're like, I wasn't expecting that.
They also do reincorporation, which audiences love because it lets them in on the joke. They're like, not everyone laughs, and I think really good comedians are ones that don't care whether the entire audience laughs.
Right.
It's like, you get 18 people in the audience that are actually laughing because they really got it, and then the other ones start laughing because these people are laughing.
Right.
And as a comedian, you're really laughing because you're like, those people are laughing. They didn't fucking get it, but they're still laughing.
Right.
I think that was one of the things that because I was doing a number of talks at different gaming events, and I did one in Amsterdam, and I just cracked a joke when I was there. I said I just went to a cafe this morning and had a cookie. I've got about an hour before it kicks in to give my talk. And maybe there was like one chuckle, but...
These Americans, they always make the jokes about the marijuana and the hashish. It is so old.
I know, maybe that's why they were laughing. But I laughed. And it's funny.
I thought it was funny. If I was there, I would have been the one guy that was laughing, right? And then they would have been like, oh, there's an American in the audience as well. Maybe it's his boss.
Maybe they actually really did go to the cafe, so they were all stoned, and I was the only one straight. I don't know.
Does he know that we're stoned?
That one guy probably felt pretty clever that he got it. My point is, I think we're going back to like what is, again, sort of what is creativity, and I think it is just being able to get outside of your comfort zone. I gave these talks because that is sort of the most fearful thing you can do is get up in front of an audience.
Oh yeah.
The worst thing for me sometimes when I'm talking is seeing a group of peer people in the audience, seeing some real seasoned game developers.
Oh, yeah.
Are they gonna call bullshit on me?
Right.
Arms like looking like this, and
they're gonna look at your shirt and go like, sure, he knows, Daddy.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the keyboard command for copy?
Right. Also, not being afraid to make a bold statement, and I think the thing is part of that being creative is not being afraid to be wrong. And you look at some of the paintings I've seen in the Great Masters, they had like 3 or 4 paintings underneath the final painting. I went to the Picasso Museum in Barcelona, and you could see all the pencil drawings that he did for the final painting he did. He did like 40 little tiny drawings, like, tiny sketch pads, and then they got more and more detail and more and more detail. Like, he didn't just go up and paint it. Like, he really, he kind of did all these little failures until he finally got to go, oh, this is the thing I want to make.
Wow.
And it was... And I think also looking at someone like Picasso, like people were always going, I could do that abstract.
Yeah, right.
But if you look at his early work, he could do absolutely realistic paintings if he did. He could do Renaissance painting. He could do anything, right? He was a master artist. And he got so good, as some of these guys do, that abstraction is the best way for him to go. Cubist stuff where he's looking at it from all sides. And I go, that's the genius of it, right? It's like you get so smart where you're like, okay, now I'm just going to deconstruct everything.
And just, so it's more the kind of the thought behind what is on the paper rather than the sort of level of mastery used to create that or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Didn't you have a story didn't you go to a museum or somewhere and there was somebody that had like a painting you were telling me one time about a dot or something? What?
Oh, yeah. It was this guy, Barnett Newman's abstract painting, Voice of Fire. It's 3 lines, 3 identical vertical lines on an 18-foot canvas. There's a red line surrounded by 2 blue lines.
Okay.
Maybe a couple of gallons of paint in there. But I think they paid like $3 million for it. And there was a huge uproar from people saying, hey, my kid could do that.
Yeah.
Again, it kind of goes back to Picasso. You're like, your kid could do that, but did your kid do that?
But your kid didn't do that and make $3 million off of that. Yeah, right.
So, I mean, for me, I kind of like, I'm not going to sit there and debate on the mastery of it, but I think the mastery of it is he got his painting in a fucking museum and they paid $3 million for it. That's the mastery of it, right? Like,
right.
Like if you can, I think it's sort of being.
Maybe he had a lot of that good Canadian weed that he gave the guys. Maybe is that what he? Maybe I'm going to show you this painting, but not until you're high. Have your checkbook ready.
I mean, if you can defend your creativity at that level, like I call this Voices of Fire, and they're like, lines. What the hell does that mean? It's like, well, the middle, the red represents the fire, and the blue, maybe the voices, right? You can say anything, but the fact that you convince people to do it. That's creative thinking right there.
Now you're getting into storytelling a little bit, which is the new hot buzzword. Because anytime kind of the corporate world catches wind of something that might make them a little bit more money, they start to get more interested in exploring that. And so now it's the big thing is storytelling. Have you noticed that?
I was actually just reading an article about, like big single player games and how companies are still making them because they're still profitable.
Are you talking about like Skyrim and Oblivion or something else?
Creed and some of these games,
okay.
Like the Ubisoft games and.
So you mean non-multiplayer games? Is that that's what you're talking, but the big ones.
The big guys were into multiplayer because they're like, well, this is how we can,
get interaction between
make
people.
A ton of money on these games. So they're still doing that. And I think there's a big thing, like Telltale Games went under because people weren't really buying those types of games, but I think.
Yeah, I saw that. What did Telltale Games make again?
They did a Game of Thrones. They did a Walking Dead game that was quite popular and won sort of Game of the Year award. And,
I'm trying to remember. The article I read gave a kind of a very specific reason because they had a certain level of success, right? They kind of climbed up, and I'm trying to remember the reason why they said they went under. And
I think it was a couple of things. I think they were working. I think the way their production was set up, I'm coming at this from producer. I think the way their production was set up is it didn't allow them time to go with a bigger game engine and to, because every
because they had to keep cranking stuff out because
they just had to,
were they like a work for hire or were they licensing IP?
No, they're kind of working with their own publishing deal, and they were going after the big IPs, right? So they were Dead and again. I think they made one of their own IPs, or one or two of their own IPs, but they were just a studio that was just working so damn hard getting content out, because they had these subscription models that are like, hey, we'll put out new content, and I think you just end up not being able to, innovate on that.
That's what the article said. It was something more around that they had gotten to this point where their way of building a game, it was sort of had become. At first, it was super innovative and really sucked people in, right? And then that's when they grew, but they never really innovated beyond that. And so people got kind of like, oh, it's kind of the same thing as this other game or something.
Well, I think, even games like Fortnite suffered that, where people were working so hard when it became successful, and even before it. And then they kind of got into this model of like, oh my God, we have to just keep pumping stuff out and we're trying to grow a team. And it gets really difficult in the industry when you have a game that has a huge amount of success, and how do you keep on top of that, right? Like it's, you kind of trying to feed this giant beast, and
Call of Duty, they've got the two teams, right? And maybe even like Treyarch.
Yep. They split between different companies. They'll do production at one place and then production at another.
The one team does release 1, 3, 5, and the other does 2, 4, 6, and so on. And maybe that's how they keep it fresh. I don't really know.
I mean, it's difficult in these times because I think especially it's difficult for some of the companies that are public, trying to keep up with the demand from Wall Street for profits.
Yeah, right.
And it kind of works against creativity in a way. And I think the movie industries, they suffer this as well, right? Like suddenly you have a looming deadline and movies get edited and re-edited and then reshot. And the same thing happens with video games. I think part of the problem, and I've heard that, one of the games like Anthem, it got so far along, they realized it just wasn't fun. And then they had to kind of scrap it and redo it from the start. And, I've been on some games, even at Gaspard, there's a game we worked on, Space Siege, that, it just wasn't working the way it was. And you have to come in and sort of put on the brakes and sort of refigure it. And, the problem
did that game ever get released? Was that a Dungeon Siege in space?
Yeah. The game actually got released, and, it was published through Sega.
Okay, because there was a game that I worked on called Star Siege, and I did a couple of voices for that. Yeah, I think the team was down in Portland or Eugene or something like that.
Maybe that one.
I
haven't heard that one.
Oh, you hadn't heard of Star Siege? And then they had another game that was after Star Siege I did some voices for too, and it was even bigger than Star Siege, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I'll put it up above, when I edit this thing. But yeah, so I didn't realize you guys had a Space Siege.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you guys released it, huh?
I think it didn't. I don't think it made much money. I think Chris Taylor, in the games wall at the company, you have all these posters of all these different games. That game title there was missing.
Oh, really?
It was like,
because you didn't want people like me going, I don't remember that game.
Yeah. We all. I think part of it was that the ship date on it was immovable. It was going to come out at this date.
Oh.
And, it was having sort of fits and starts trying to find what it was and how big it was. And that happens at a bunch of companies. You're playing it and you're like, it's not innovative, it's not new, it's just same old. And sometimes it's also hard with games to see the big picture. Like, what's this game going to feel like when it's 40 hours? Because usually when you're prototyping it, you're only seeing what the game's going to be like in sort of 15-minute increments.
Right, and maybe the mechanics or whatever are awesome in that small, short time frame, but then over time...
Right, it's hard to feel the progression, right?
Yeah.
How does it feel leveling up? How does it feel like, I found the secret weapon? You don't get those moments in the game that you kind of build up. Some games, like you're suddenly 3 hours in, then finally you get, a new weapon, right? It's a bow and arrow with a grenade attached to it. And you're like, oh, wow, now the game takes it up to a whole new level.
Yeah.
But it's hard to tell. Like, how do you tell, that's going to be fun? And that's why I'm always amazed with designers, because some designers can go, no, that is totally going to be fun at 15 hours in, and they know this pacing so well. And even like environmental designers in games, right? Like they put just something like a little blue light in a corner. And it's really subtle, but to your mind, you're like, I need to go over there. And you go over there, and sure enough, there's like some loot that you get. People who haven't honed their creativity wouldn't do that. They would make a big sign and say, loot down here, come get it,
Right.
That's just kind of obvious.
Just the level of refinement that somebody might be able to take that idea of where's the loot, or a hint.
I mean, when I've worked in the industry, I've worked with, so many different types, and I've worked as an artist, and I've worked at other things. But it is amazing. There's people who don't and haven't honed their creative side. And sometimes they get to be in charge. And, I've worked with a number of people who you're presenting ideas to, and you're like, oh, this is going to be great. Or you're showing even artwork to them and they don't get it. They're like, I don't get this. And you're like, how can you not get this? And I think part of that is just, a lot of artists and creative people have that like I grew up on Heavy Metal magazine and Moebius in there, and just like,
man, you don't strike me as a heavy metal dude. It's like, did you have long hair and the works?
Oh yeah. I was kind of a rocker in high school, and then
you got to send me a picture.
Oh yeah,
we'll put it up, and then I'll put my long-haired picture up, and we'll be like the two.
Then I started listening to. I don't know, for some reason it was just sort of a switch. I'd listened to I was like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin, and then suddenly my musical taste started changing to like
Barry Manilow. You just suddenly shifted.
like suddenly, Dead Kennedys and Talking Heads and stuff that was sort of out on the edges, and then, slowly became mainstream in itself. It's funny, even before that, like the Led Zeppelin songs that I like.
Because when you squeeze my lemon out.
Is that your favorite one there, Mike?
And people hated that album, and I'm like, I love this album. What's wrong with it, man?
Which album? Which one?
In Through the Outdoor.
Oh, In Through the Outdoor. What was on that? Like, name a
see, you don't even know. What's my point?
Are you a Dred Zeppelin fan? You remember those guys?
I love Dred Zeppelin.
I want a whole lot of love, where they had the Elvis singer.
Yeah. They even do like a disco album with the Bee Gees.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
But they do it in the reggae style with the Elvis singer? Really? I've never heard that one. Are those guys still around?
I have no idea.
I didn't know they did a Bee Gees album, man. I would have to find that.
They're probably doing like Coachella at like some state that's way off, behind the washrooms or something.
Or they're doing the Emerald Queen Casino out on the Indian reservation, probably, right? Isn't that where all the old rock stars go to die at the casinos?
Like, the remaining members of Foreigner, and it's like I'm actually I'm the lighting guy. I'm the only one that's left.
I do the lights, the sound, I sing, and I have a drum machine. Do you have any things that you do if you do become creatively blocked? Any ways that you get unblocked?
Haha tips.
I think sort of the main thing is you need to take a break. You need to actually switch your channels and do something different. If it's something that you need to do that day, you're going to be blocked. But if it's something that's the longer term, it's like, hey, we've got a week to solve this problem. Get out of the office, go do something. It's like, get the dopamine, adrenaline, endorphins going. Like, for me, if I could go ride a roller coaster, that would be it for me. I just feel like ride the roller coaster. I'm like, okay, I'm done now. All the stuff, because I have a healthy fear of heights. It scares the hell out of me, but it's always like the best $3 I've ever spent. I'm like, I loved it. I was scared, and it's
Mike, we're not living in the 50s anymore. I don't think you can ride a roller coaster for $3. Okay, I just want to make that clear. And if you can ride a roller coaster for $3, I don't know if I'd want to get on that roller coaster. If you know what I'm saying?
A homemade one, though.
Yeah,
Hell's Trailer Park.
Jim Bob that lives out back built a roller coaster with trash cans and shopping carts.
Steel. If you're stuck with a blocker, do something different. Like, get your brain doing something different. Because I think creativity is all about training your brain to look at the world in a different way. And I think if you're looking at the same problem, the brain just starts getting tunnel vision. And what you need to do is actually get the neurons firing in a different way. It's great if you can do something one way, but if you can do it like 3 or 4 different ways, train your brain to just keep looking at the world in a different way and dealing with a problem in a different way, that will start training your brain to be more creative.
Right. Okay. No, that's a cool tip. Yeah. Well, because you do. If you're just sitting at your desk and first of all, you're not getting any new input, new stimulus, and you're just here and you're just locked on, you don't have anything refreshing the mind.
Right. When I talked to you before, I made the point that I work in an industry where you are creating stuff for a very wide demographic, right? You can't let yourself get, the old guy with a cigar, like,
these kids, damn it.
Get off the swing set there, Kitty. I think what you got to do is you just got to keep being open to it. And I think the point I made last time is that you can still go to your, if you're that kind of person, you can still go to your monster truck and tractor trailer pull event.
Sunday.
With the exploding lady. And I think after that, you can go to a modern art museum or go to see some, underground art show. You don't have to be this person all the time.
Yeah, right. You identify with the monster truck. You're just saying, look, if you're like a country western fan, like redneck or whatever, you don't have to just do that, right? Like you can expand your horizons and go to the ballet or something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I was with a friend this weekend, and we're down in San Francisco, and we're just kind of showing around. Like, we went to the ballpark, went to the ball game, but we also went to a couple of bars where the Beat Poets, Jack Kerouac and those guys were around. So we kind of did that, and then we went off into like another little hipster bar, and then we went into the Mission. So we did all these things that I was trying to take in places that not just the tourists were at, but you can still be a sports fan and still be make alternative music, right? There's nothing's mutually exclusive, and I think that's sort of the big point with creativity is that it's all about everything. Improv, if anyone's ever taken improv courses, they have a line that they say is like, accept all offers. Like if someone comes up on a plate and says, here, have some pig brain, I might be like, well,
no thanks in real life, right? But in improv, you're like, that sounds great.
Right. And I think that creativity is all the same, and I've managed artists and sometimes you work with different artists and some of them will get blocked and you go, hey, I need like 10 different personalities for these characters.
Yeah.
And some of them be able to come up with 2, and then they're like, I don't know any more characters.
Yeah.
And then I always try to force them. I'm like, okay, let's go through some movies and go, who do you think this person is? Like are they a type A personality, or are they an introvert or an extrovert? And trying to get that guy again, it's just getting them away from their desk and looking at something different.
Yeah.
And looking at the world through a different way.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really good piece of advice.
Favorite books.
Are there any books that you've ever read that have helped you in your approach to creativity, or maybe not creativity? It could just be something that was really impactful on you as a person that you think other people would like.
Yeah, I think part of it is I, as an artist, I'm always I'm very ADHD, and I get hey, shiny object over there, and I'll run over and start looking at that, and so. Yeah. Like I say, creativity is all about discipline, and there's a great book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. He was I think
See, that's really interesting. You say creativity is all about discipline. I think there's a lot of people that don't associate with creativity, like maybe just some very straight kind of business focused individuals, and that's not to say business people that work in regular business, like there's accountants that paint and play music, and there's lawyers that do creative things. So I'm not putting anybody in the box. In fact, with the show, with Creative Debate, I mean, it's my contention that everybody is creative. And you, I think, said the same thing a little while ago in this conversation. But the point that I'm making is that it was something that you just said. What did you just say about creativity takes discipline? And I do think there are some people that feel like being creative is very undisciplined. So I'd love for you to, and you probably on your way to explain that. But I think that's a really interesting thing that you said.
Yeah,
I don't think I've heard anybody say.
Well, it's interesting. If for anybody who's ever gone through art school, anybody would know this, is that count the people out of art school that actually went on to work as an artist. It's a very, very few. Art school is really hard. You can go take literature, and how many of them become professional writers? Like, again, professional people who make their living by doing art, writing, or by being a musician, right?
Yeah.
The odds are against you. It's like, and plus, part of it is you have to really hustle, but the other part is you have to be very disciplined, right? And so, I was able to squeak through. I did art. I consider myself to be very creative, so I think I was able to do stuff that was creatively intriguing, but probably not as, as disciplined as it should have been. So there's a book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, and he was the writer of The Legend of Bagger Vance. He was a Hollywood screenwriter.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
And he was sort of writing about, when you come at these things, the discipline you need if you want to be a professional artist or a professional writer, it's kind of like, think of yourself as a professional athlete. You got to practice every day. You got to be the top of your game. You got to want to win. You got to want to hustle, right? All of these things, you can't just half-ass it. You can't just be like, well, I might draw a doggy, next week or something like that.
That's called a hobby, right?
Yeah,
that's a hobby.
And I mentioned Picasso earlier on. Picasso did thousands and thousands of painting. He probably did thousands of painting in 1 year, right? Like was just do art. He was like the pro athlete of
art. Huh? Okay.
A lot of those guys, Monet and those guys were, and a lot of other current artists are as well, right? And I think that's the thing, is that this book sort of it's one of those rah books, but I always found it really, really great. Because each chapter is kind of like, here's what you can do to unblock yourself. Here's some of the things that you should do, and be really diligent about doing them every day. If you want to be that kind, if you want to be a professional and call yourself professional, then you have to be a professional. You can't just, otherwise, like you say, it's a hobby.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, no, keep going. Sorry.
I know musicians, right? The musicians that I know that are working, they're either studio musicians or they go on tour. They play every day. I know one guy that plays, and he's down in Nashville, and he's probably down in Austin as well.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he plays almost every single night in a bar.
Yeah.
And and that's how he ekes out his living, right?
Wow.
And he does exactly what he loves, but he does it well because he's there doing it.
Yeah, you are what you do. Right, you are what you do, and that's a big thing that that's another theme. Somebody else I talked to recently said that. So it sounds like that book, The War of Art. Is that like a flip on the Art of War? Sun Tzu's Art of War.
Yeah. Because I think I've read both books. I have them side by side on my bookshelf, and
that's cool.
The Art of War is also just talking about being disciplined, and I love that book. There's one chapter in it, and if I could have a quick aside, there's one chapter in it that says, one of the ways to win a war was to actually get the king of another place there to have an affair with a spy from your side. So you're able to subtly take control without even going to war. So some of the chapters in that book, it was the art of war, but part of the art of war was actually not going to war. And that was sort of my takeaway, is like, win the war without going to war. That's the best way, because it was saying, if you do that, you destroy the land, you destroy the culture, and really what they want to do is take it over. And,
okay, that was their way of doing it. Yeah.
Right, and so so books do have some similarity. And,
I remember that part of the Art of War.
There was a beheading in the Art of War, and there isn't in the War of Art.
Oh, well, that's good. So you're safe if you don't like beheadings. get the art of no. If you don't like beheadings, get the War of Art. If you are into beheadings, then maybe get the Art of War.
It can be confusing if you get the wrong book and you're looking for a good beheading. You're like, wait a minute, there's no beheading in this book. No.
It's weird too, because the War of Art starts with war, but it's about art, and the Art of War starts with art, but it's really about war. So that's another potentially confusing points. But I'll clarify that with a little graphic, the book cover, so people know what to look for. Yeah, they know what to look for. Yeah, like a Monty Python type animation.
Useful tools.
What about tools? Any tools that you use kind of daily, weekly that help you get things done?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I have a simple one. It's just a little web browser tool. It's a web browser that can also be on my phone. It's called To-Do List. And it's just my daily list of to-do items. And you can prioritize them. I know it's boring.
What did you say, Mike?
It's
We're
boring,
talking about tools?
It is necessary.
My to-do list. Yeah, okay. No, I'm with you on the to-do list. I've got my to-do list. But is there something special about this? Is it what is it a program you can download
Yeah, I think it is. It's very visual for me. It's got a click button. It's very pleasing to clear your to-do list, right? Or okay, I'm not going to do that today. I'll do it tomorrow.
Is it different than any other to-do list, or is it just kind of the same? And is there something special about it?
There's just something visual to it. And
can I download it? Can I download it? Is it?
Yeah, you can download it.
What's it called? What's it
called?
To-do
list. I mean, they got the freaking title right on it.
Mike, listen, I don't even have to go to the store right now, the Apple Store or the Android Google Play. I can tell you right now, there's probably 50 programs I can download called To-Do List. Yeah. It's not like Mike's To-Do List or something, or the War of Art To-Do List.
I downloaded like 10 of them, and this is the one that stuck with it. And part of that is, if you get these, people are like, why is Angry Birds so good, or these bubble games so good? And there's like 80 of them. It's like, because one of them just feels better. Like they put all of their effort into making that button sound, the way you move it, everything. And this program, they did the same thing. It's just easy. I don't have to be like, oh, Jesus Christ, why didn't they do this or this? It's just like, oh, it's so simple. And sometimes that's sort of the elegance with it, is the simplicity, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are like, oh, I use this software program and it costs, $800 and it's like this. And I keep, I'm not always lo-fi, but I'm like, if this will do the job, then that's all you need. Like I've used Photoshop and After Effects and all that for all these years. There's huge components of those programs I've never ever touched, right?
Yeah,
for Photoshop, I do some print stuff, but not a lot.
Yeah.
I know maybe a third of Photoshop, and I know it really well. The other parts of it, I don't know at all.
And you don't need to. You know what you're trying to accomplish, and you just because nobody has time to do that, right? Like who has time to learn every single feature? And they power pack these things with features. So you have an objective, and then if you need something that it has that you don't know, you're like, God, I got to solve this problem. Then you maybe figure out what.
Well, it's interesting. I do because I do consulting and contract work and that. You go into these different companies and they have all these different tools. The question I get asked a lot is like, "Oh, are you familiar with this?" And this is where
it's like, yeah, I'm familiar with it.
And I'm kind of like, no, I've never touched it. And they're like, oh, how are you going to learn? I'm like every 800,000 other programs that didn't exist before I got in the industry, came into the industry. Like Maya didn't exist.
Yeah.
All these ZBrush and then all the Handsoft and Salesforce, all these programs didn't exist, and like you get them and you're like, okay, I only need to use them for 8 different ways. I don't need to know the program in and out. I just need to do this.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Like I remember having someone ask me, once like, oh, we use Confluence.
We use that. Yeah.
And I'm like, they made the program so freaking easy.
Yeah, it is.
You didn't have to learn. You don't even need to look at the directions. You just go in.
You don't. Not really.
I can make a page and I can put stuff on it.
Right. And, No, you only need it for. Yeah.
But I think there is this sort of ideas that rare is it you're going to find these days that someone is an absolute expert on any one thing, and if they are, they're probably delving in too deeply to it.
Mike's hot tip of the day: if you're too deep in a program, you're probably spending too much time in it.
Right.
Yeah.
That is true. If it's not the be all and end all of what you're doing, right? Like,
right.
again, if someone says, Mike, can you schedule this project? What are the tools you need? I'm like, calculator and Excel. And
right, yeah.
And I'm off to the races, right?
Right.
Give me your game design document, and I'll pull it apart and make a schedule out of that. And I said, that's how we've kind of done it. And I go, over the years, things get complexified, right? Because some people want to create work, and I find, to justify making a software program that they want to sell on people, right? Like, here's a new way to schedule a project, and you're like, okay.
And it's a SaaS app, and it's only $20 per user per month.
Right. And
of course you'll need Excel too, but that's not going to do exactly what this does.
Yeah. I mean, do you know how many times I've been at a company where they have brought in this new system, and people have it on their desktop, and you realize the project manager I'm working with, they have Excel hidden behind it, and they keep popping up, and that's where they do their work. And then they pretend to put it into Microsoft Project.
Oh yeah. Well, project is another thing. You got me speaking like a Canadian now, Mike.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I picked up on your project. It's actually project, okay, Mike? We're in America. See, there we go. Hey, can I get a can of Molson, eh? To go with it, and we'll talk about. Now I'm doing some kind of weird, East Coast New York thing. But anyway, listen. I was going to say though about that is that it seems like nowadays, okay, I'm a Vegas video user, but I've also used Premiere and I've also used Final Cut Pro. And while there are a lot of differences between those three programs, there's still, enough common things that if somebody was like, Dex, we have to use Premiere, and maybe I'm faster in Vegas, so there'd be a little bit of a ramp, but I still understand the fundamentals of how to edit video, and I understand what filters are, and I understand ripple editing, and I understand all these core things. I'm still going to be able to get up on that relatively quickly. And then even a step beyond that, that's just talking about one set of applications, right? Video editors. But I think that almost these days, almost all applications, right? How do you open a file? File, open, right? How do you copy, paste, edit, right? Where are my preferences? Edit, preferences, or file prep. I mean, there's so many common sort of ways to build applications that even if you don't really, if it's an app in a sort of genre of apps that you've never used before, you can probably figure it out, and you might have to look stuff up on Google, but
Right. Well, that's why, if I were hiring someone, I'm not going to hire someone who knows a specific program. I'm going to hire a creative person who doesn't give a shit what program they're going to use. They're like, oh, well, I'll just learn it.
Exactly.
That's the thing, is that keeping that creative process going is you're always learning. You're always learning. And I always sort of say, and it kind of goes back to the War of Art, and I think that's had a passage in it that, even back in the day, who was once sort of the best golfer in the world, Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
He had a golf coach. Like, think about that. Like, you're the best of the best, right?
Yeah.
You still have a golf coach, and I think that's
all the best athletes have coaches. They all have coaches.
So even if you're at the top of your game, you're still learning. I think there's something, to go. If you're an artist or a musician, you're like, nah, I don't need to learn anything more. I'm great.
Right.
No, you should. You should always be forcing yourself to learn something new.
All right, dude. Well, hey, man, it's been a real pleasure. I appreciate you coming back because, it's nice to. Because now I've got the format right, and everything will kind of match up. So
it's the do-over, the Redux version.
It's the Redux. I forgot to go full screen mode. But that's okay. I was planning on doing black bars at the top and the bottom anyway. It doesn't matter.
I thought you were going to say we have to do this again.
No, Mike. Oh my God, dude! I didn't do it perfect. We gotta do it again. No. So, all right. Anything else or?
No, I think I'm covered most of the stuff.
Yeah, no, we did. We definitely did.
Go for the other video if you need to.
Yeah, I could. I could be like, this is round 3. We had to perfect this
8 years ago.
Well, that's the problem with being like the first guest on a show. It's like this, you're like the prototype.
Right.
So, I'll definitely buy the sandwiches and beer the next time we see each other, man. So if you make it down to Austin, that'd be my way to say thanks.
All right, Dex.
All right, enjoy Santa Rosa. Go stomp some grapes, man.
I will.
All right.
Awesome.
All right, I'll see you later.
Okay, talk to you, man.
All right, bye. Oh, wait, hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Did I tell you? I got this new at the end now. It's so weird getting off these calls with everybody. It's just kind of awkward, you know. I'm looking for the end meeting button and stuff.
Goodbye.
So I'm going to do I might do this thing, just awkward goodbyes. And then it's like a cut scene.
Awkward goodbyes.
And then it's us just trying to navigate, you know, okay, see ya. Okay, bye.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's even you see it, and then, oh, yeah, one more thing. And
yeah.
Then, hold on.
Right. An hour later.
or you could just have like, you know, silence, just the video, no one's saying anything, and just like,
and play some music.
Right.
All right, dude. Well, I am going for real now. So
okay. All right.
For real this time.
Hey, you hang up first. You hang up first.
It's goodbye for real. No, you hang up first.
Okay, I'm hitting leave meeting.
All right, later. Bye.